Hello and welcome to Perspectives for Wednesday, September the 28th, 2016. I'm Deacon Pedro. Today is day 3 of the Canadian Bishops' plenary meeting. But before that, let's go to Rome, where today Pope Francis sent a telegram to the President of Israel on the death of Shimon Peres. In the message, the Holy Father expressed deep sadness and recalled fondly his time with the former Israeli Prime Minister and President. He also expressed great appreciation for Peres' tireless efforts in favor of peace. I hope, read the telegram, that his memory and many years of service will inspire us all to work with ever greater urgency for peace and reconciliation between peoples. In this way, his legacy will truly be honored, and the common good for which he so diligently labored will find new expressions as humanity strives to advance on the path towards enduring peace. We all recall that one of the last ceremonies in which Shimon Peres participated as a public figure took place in the Vatican Gardens in June 2014 with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and with Pope Francis. Also, in today's general audience, Pope Francis continued his catechesis on mercy, reflecting on the forgiveness of the cross, especially focusing on the 2 thieves who were crucified with Jesus. The Pope said that insulting Jesus by calling on him to get down from the cross misses the point. They did not understand the mystery of the sacrifice of Jesus, he said. Jesus is able to save precisely because he remained on the cross. By remaining on the cross, Christ showed his omnipotence and forgave us. The Holy Father added that by dying on the cross between 2 criminals, Jesus shows that the salvation of God is offered for everybody. No one is excluded. It is offered for all. He emphasized to those suffering in hospital bed or living in a prison, those caught up in a war. Look to the cross, Pope Francis said. God is with you. He remains with you upon the cross. He is offered to all as a Savior. As for the good thief, the Holy Father said he offers us a model of penance and a model for a Christian who entrusts himself to Jesus. At the end of the catechesis, Pope Francis made a forceful appeal for assistance for the thousands of innocent civilians trapped in the besieged city of Aleppo in Syria. I appeal to the consciences of those responsible for the bombings, Pope Francis said. They will have to account to God. In the last week alone, dozens of civilians have been reportedly killed by the bombings in the city. The United Nations World Food Program has said that it is extremely concerned about the more than 250,000 people that are trapped in eastern Aleppo and who are cut off from food, water, medicine, and other essential supplies. I renew my appeal, said the Holy Father, that everyone makes a commitment with all their strength to the protection of civilians as a mandatory and urgent obligation. Today, representatives of dozens of Catholic charitable organizations and leaders of Catholic communities in Syria and Iraq are arriving in Rome for a meeting to coordinate Catholic emergency and humanitarian assistance to the victims of war, displaced people, and refugees in the region. And here in Canada, bishops continue with their annual plenary meeting. This morning, they began their meetings with a beautiful celebration of Divine Liturgy in the Maronite Rite, presided by Bishop Paul Marwan Tabel, eparchial bishop of the Maronites of Canada. Yesterday, the bishops heard about Laudato Si and the care for our common home from Father Michael Czerny of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace. Sebastian Gomes had a chance to speak to him.
Now, in your presentation, you said some really interesting things that, this isn't a document about issues particularly, but about a new way of seeing reality, about seeing a bigger picture. What did you mean by that?
Well, one of the things is that we have had in a sense, the luxury until now of assuming that our world was going to go on more or less as it is, and we could focus on one issue or another. But when the question is our survival, the survival of the planet, and the quality of life for everyone who lives now and who's going to live here, then that's a bigger and, in a sense, a more complete picture that we have to look at as a whole.
And the other element that you mentioned that is very important to Pope Francis is dialogue, that whatever we do has to begin with dialogue. Why is dialogue so central to this particular issue?
Well, I think one way of looking at it is that if we are indeed in this all together, then it's not up to a few to decide what's going to happen. We are really in it together. And the unfortunate injustices with which we've become accustomed, whereby a few of us consume so much and so many have less than the minimum necessary, and that those who are least responsible for climate change and environmental degradation are the ones who are already paying the highest price and are vulnerable to the biggest suffering. This has to change soon. And it's going to change when those people are at the table, when they are able to express their concerns and are able to also share their insights.
One more question for you. The encyclical has already had an enormous impact on the dialogue, the conversation about ecological justice, sustainability, etc. Has anything surprised you in the reception or the broad reach of the document?
Well, on the one hand, it's very encouraging to see the practically endless variety of things that people do in response to Laudato Si. The ways in which they present it, the way they read it together, the way they celebrate it liturgically. We now have had 2 September 1st as World Days of Prayer for the care of creation. We're involved even in the whole month of creation between the 1st of September and the 4th of October. Those are wonderful changes, and they can only grow and bring more benefits. On the other hand, I think we do need to struggle against political discouragement. And while we were more or less impressed with what happened in Paris, I think most of us have forgotten about the road that leads from Paris through Morocco this November to the future. And so I would hope that in one response to Laudato Si is for us to inform ourselves what has our country done since Paris, and what is our country preparing to bring to the table in Morocco in November, and to ask our members of parliament, to ask our environment minister, to ask the prime minister to let us know, because we really are concerned. We're not going to be satisfied to say, well, Paris was idealistic and Morocco, well, we weren't ready. That's not good enough.
Among the groups that are present at the bishop's meeting is the Catholic Near East Welfare Association. Sebastian also had the chance to speak to its president, Monsignor John Kozar, about the situation in Ethiopia.
There's a very interesting and traumatic, difficult situation happening right there. What do we need to know about what's happening in Ethiopia?
Well, first of all, Ethiopia is a very large country geographically. It's very challenging geographically. It has everything from desert, it has high plain where there's good agriculture, and there's tea plantations and things like that. Then there's a lot of mountainous area. It also borders on Eritrea and some other countries, but there's strife with Eritrea. So you bring all of these factors together, and you have many races of people. You have a healthy mix of Christian and Muslim, about 50-50, although the Orthodox part of our family is much larger. But in the last 3 to 5 years, there's been a terrible drought,
Right.
Almost countrywide. And hundreds of thousands, in the millions of people literally, have been dramatically affected to the point of starving. And that has been further exacerbated in the last 6 months by torrential rains. You have no rain for about 5 years, and then you get some rain, and farmers immediately said, oh, this is a sign from God. They started to plant. Well, it was torrential, and it continues as torrential rains. So the drought, the cumulative effect of drought will last for at least another year or two, even if rain comes and rain is controlled and all of that. The nutritional deficits and so forth, they're very long lasting.
The other thing that we hear about Ethiopia is a refugee crisis. It's a refugee country, I think, because a lot of refugees come from neighboring countries,
Correct.
Somalia, Eritrea, you mentioned.
Yes.
So that must also have a really difficult impact.
And to the credit of the government is very welcoming. We're very supportive, very present in camps, especially with Eritreans that have come there, and others, Somalis and so forth. But the government is very open and very supportive. There are some other challenges, though, that the government might not do as well as they could.
Right.
But it can be overwhelming, just the sheer numbers.
Right.
And from there, as we have seen these terrible news items of people, that's a jumping off point to go a little further north and by sea to try to come to Europe.
Right.
So this is sort of a staging area, if you will, for some of that.
Finally, in 2012, the Vatican created a new ordinariate for Catholics of Anglican heritage. Sebastian also had the chance to speak with the new bishop of the Personal Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter, Bishop Stephen Lopes.
Your diocese is not a traditional one, as we would think.
True.
Explain to our audience a little bit about who you are and who your parishioners, who your sheep are in your diocese.
My diocese is called the Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter, which is a very long name to describe a diocese that doesn't have a particular territory, like Ottawa or Cornwall here, where the meeting is taking place. But it's a diocese that has been formed by Pope Benedict XVI for those communities who were formerly Anglican and have come into full communion with the Catholic Church. So when an Anglican parish and their priests together enter the Catholic Church as a body, this is the jurisdiction that they belong to. And so there are, in this Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter, it's comprised of 43 of these kind of parishes and parochial communities in the United States and Canada. So I'm an American and live in Houston, Texas, where our cathedral is, but the diocese extends wherever these parishes are. And so there are about 9 of these parishes in Canada. And so I'm also a member of the Canadian Conference of Bishops as well.
Now, in Canada, we have many different Christian traditions. We have Catholics, we have Anglicans, we have so many more. And a lot of people might be wondering, how is it possible to be a Catholic and simultaneously an Anglican of sorts? Because you don't sort of give up your Anglican identity when you become a part of this personal ordinariate, right? So how does that work?
Well, the idea that I think informs Pope Benedict XVI's vision for the unity of Christians in Anglicanorum Cedibus, that's the document he produced in 2009, is that no, you don't abandon these parts of yourself, that the faith that you learned as a young person, as an Anglican, let's say, is the faith that was nurtured in you. It was the hope for glory and the gospel in which you were raised. And ultimately, it's that faith and the living out of that faith and fidelity to the teachings that you learned, which impels you interiorly, sometimes without even knowing it, towards the fullness of Catholic unity. And so when a person comes to ask to be received into the full communion of the Catholic Church, it's not that they're necessarily leaving everything behind to be forgotten, those things and those expressions never be done again, those prayers never to be said again. No, those are the very things that have prompted you to ask to be received into full communion.
Based in Houston, Texas, the Personal Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter has more than 40 Roman Catholic parishes and communities across the United States and Canada. Now tonight, Canadian bishops and plenary participants will make a pilgrimage to the Door of Mercy at the St. Croix Church in Cornwall, Ontario, where they will celebrate evening prayer and Eucharistic benediction presided by Archbishop Terence Prendergast of Ottawa. You can stay tuned after our French coverage of the Bishop's Plenary for this special celebration of Vespers live from St. Croix Church in Cornwall at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm Deacon Pedro. Have a good night.